Celebrations then for Leganés. Of course, they're all about survival this season. Atleti were all about the title and still, of course, are in the race. But if you're going to go across the line against Barcelona and Real Madrid, you need to be winning these sort of games. Just a reminder then how things look at the top of the table. We can see that it is Atleti 1 point clear of Real Madrid, who are in action tomorrow morning. They're at home against Las Palmas. Let's join Sid Lowe, of course, who was at Getafe, Barcelona. But for all that, the professional he was, he's at Leganés against Atletico Madrid. And what was weird about this game, Sid, that first half from Atleti was actually some of the best football we've seen from them from a while, despite this great winning streak. But the second half, they went completely flat.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think for 30, 35 minutes, they were very good indeed. They hit the frame of the goal 3 times. They had opportunities that they didn't take. There was a handful of very good saves from Dimitrovic, and it felt like the goal was coming. But I think maybe in a way that's part of the problem, isn't it? That there's that kind of psychological impact of knowing that you've had your opportunities and they've slipped you by. And then in the second half, you're right, they didn't really get going. They made a change at half-time. They took Conor Gallagher off. They tried to open the pitch up with Samuel Lino, but it didn't really work until late on. And the really striking thing for me was the number of crosses they were putting into the box, normally largely aimless, in a week in which they didn't have Alexander Sorloth. So you're putting crosses in basically to nobody because you haven't really got anyone in there waiting for them who can head a ball.
Not the brightest thing to do, is it? Well, clearly been kicked out of the house, Sid, if he's going to Leganés in the morning.
Everyone's a winner. Claire's happy he's gone.
He's not even
Sid gets
working
to watch his football. He's loving it. As I mentioned, of course, Sid also covering our game that just finished here, Getafe against Barcelona. We'll be hearing from Hansi Flick in a moment, but first, Sid caught up with Jules Koundé.
Try and explain to us what it is that makes coming to Getafe so difficult. It's now 5 years without winning here. How do you explain these results?
Yeah, it's a tough place, tough environment, tough team. They play very hard. They play long balls. They fight. They play with what they have, and it makes it very difficult every time. They don't leave you space. They're very aggressive, and yeah.
Frankie de Jong protested like Koundé action with Uche. How did you see it?
You know, there is a lot of emotion here in this stadium. You know, in every situation, in every contact, it's well, I never loved this before, so it's for me a new experience. But at the end, I'm not happy, but I can accept it today because we tried everything, and so we're looking now for the next match on Tuesday.
Sid, we were talking ahead of this game and we were like, we know exactly what's going to happen. We know what Getafe are going to do, but we think maybe Barcelona have that momentum, that quality in the final third this time, though, to make the difference. And it was actually in that final third where they did make a difference this time round.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it was interesting listening to Hansi Flick there saying, you know, he'd not seen this before, he's not ready for it, but of course, Koeman went through this, Xavi Hernandez went through this, now he's gone through it as well. As you say, we began the programme this evening saying that we know what's going to happen, and Barcelona, I felt in that first half at least, created the chances to have maybe found their way through, found a way to get space behind Getafe a little bit on the two sides of the pitch. Again, in the second half it happened, but that final touch wasn't the best. I often say this to you, that when it depends where you sit and how you see the game, but behind the goal on Lamine Yamal's side of the pitch, I was very struck by how often he was getting into the game and how much of a threat it felt like he was going to be, but how that final touch didn't quite happen with him. And he's, you know, this isn't a criticism in the sense that we're talking about an absolutely brilliant player, and I actually thought the way he played was pretty good, but the final touch didn't happen. And maybe that's the thing that was lacking tonight, as well, of course, as the fact that Getafe play very deep, which means that Barcelona can't run beyond them, which is what they've done to such good effect in the last 2 games in which they'd scored 10 goals.
Isn't it funny, Sid, eh? All that criticism we've aimed at Real Madrid, they can go top of the table tomorrow.
Yep, it's the nature of it. I mean, and this is the nature of it. You know, this has happened a lot with Real Madrid. You know, bear in mind, we're talking about a Real Madrid team who we've said this a lot in the Champions League over the last 5 or 6 years, and they keep winning it. You know, they start seasons a little bit poorly. We think that it's not quite working. They find a way through. Sometimes it's miraculous. Sometimes it's fortunate. Sometimes it's brilliant. Sometimes it's amazing comebacks. But they find a way, partly, of course, because they have very good players, but also because the nature of La Liga this year, in terms of looking at it as far as the title race goes, there's a lot of teams that can make your life difficult. So Real Madrid have a bad run, but they're right up there. Why? Because Atletico Madrid started badly and then got strong. Barcelona started strongly and then it got very bad. Bear in mind, with tonight, Barcelona have only won 1 of the last 8 La Liga games. That's why Real Madrid are right back in it and we're so far ahead of them now.
But will there be the same sort of criticism aimed at Barcelona because it is Getafe and we know what their record like is there?
That's a good question. I think what will happen is I think there will be criticism of Barcelona's inability to make the most of the fact they got the lead, because we all felt that the most difficult thing for them tonight was to score that first goal, was to force Getafe to step out a little bit. And having scored that goal so early and made a couple of other chances, I think there will be criticism that they didn't then manage to go on and win. But I think actually a lot of the focus, because of the nature of Getafe, because they're a special case, because everybody talks about the provocation, the way that they play, I think actually the focus will be on Getafe from a kind of a stylistic point of view, rather than on Barcelona more broadly. Partly, of course, because, as we say, because they come from winning the Supercopa and scoring 5 goals against Madrid, because they come from putting 5 against Betis in the Copa del Rey. But if you look at it just in terms of that league run, that's genuinely problematic. Just one win in 8 is really, really bad.
Yeah, you brought that up, Greg, obviously when we were talking earlier on in the show. 1 in 8. You're not winning La Liga anywhere near that.
No, and that's a worry for the supporters, and I think we almost see 2 Hansi Flicks. One in the cup competition, he's sort of chilled, relaxed Hansi Flick that we saw at the start of the season, and the Hansi Flick that we saw in the second half, albeit, you know, somewhat provocated by the antics of Getafe and their manager getting upset and their players going to ground. But we saw that before the winter break. We saw a much more animated Hansi Flick on the touchline, a much more frustrated manager, a manager who felt decisions were going against him. And Sid's right, this run is poor, and they have to adjust that. If they don't adjust it, they won't win the league. I mean, Las Palmas could beat Real Madrid tomorrow. That's the way this season is in the Liga. Leganés, we'd have thought Atleti 15-game winning streak, go to Leganés, who are, 17th in the league, 16th, something like that. They're going to roll them over. They don't. Barcelona are going to keep the goals going. They don't. So, you know, Real Madrid could screw it up tomorrow. That's the way this league has been this year. That's the way this side has been this year. But what an opportunity to go 7 points clear of your biggest rivals, not your only rivals, your biggest rivals. There's a great opportunity for them tomorrow. But somehow Hansi Flick has to address the league form, not the cup form. The cup form is good. The league form is a worry.